Can you debug an app with breakpoints in the whole nine in production? Well, yes, if your hosting provider and tools support it. Let me show you. So for today, we're going to be using Azure App Service and Visual Studio Code because those things support this remote debugging scenario. And so we're going to need this Azure Tools extension for vscode. Now let's take a look at the app. So here's our app and it's running in Azure and it looks like it's running just fine, but it actually isn't. So if we delete one of these items and then refresh the page, even though it looks like it went away, it didn't. It comes right back. So let's debug this in production to figure out what's going on here. So the first thing we're going to want to do is come to the Azure extension and look for our application, which is running in Azure App Service. It's a Node application, and this should work for Node or Python apps. And then we're going to right-click the application and just say Start Remote Debugging. And what this is going to do is it's going to enable remote debugging on the site, and to do that, it has to restart the site. This is something to be aware of when you're debugging in production. If you restart the site, you may bounce everybody that's on there off. That's not a great experience. Once the debugger is attached, we can debug this app in production exactly like we would if it was local. So here's our files. They're all local. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the delete service here to see what's going wrong. So what we can do here is we can drop a breakpoint just like we would normally if we were working on this application locally. Now let's go back to the application running in production and let's delete an item. And this will actually cause the application to break right in our local code here, but we're debugging against production. So we have a breakpoint here, and we can inspect all of these things exactly like we would if we were running locally. So we can see our ID parameter and our category as well. The ID is undefined, which is probably part of the problem here. Now, it's important to note that when you add a breakpoint like this in production, no one else can access the site. So for instance, if we copy this and we open a new tab and we try to access it, it will just sit there and spin. And that's because the application is busy because we're debugging it. And this is why you want to be careful when you debug in production. It's not something you want to do unless you absolutely have to. But there are some things that you can do to cause it to not hang up like this. So what we could do instead here is instead of having a breakpoint, let's continue on, and you'll see when we do that, the tab actually loads. We can use a log point instead. So let's go ahead and back up to the file that actually calls this service here. Let's go down to the bottom where the ID actually comes in, and we'll just check the value of the ID here. But instead of adding a breakpoint here, we're just going to right click and we're going to add a log point. And a log point just logs out a value to the console without causing the whole application to stop at a breakpoint. So to do that, let's just say the ID is equal to, and then we have to put expressions inside of these brackets here, and the category variable is equal to the category right here. Okay, so now that we have this, we'll just hit enter to save that. Let's go back to our production app and let's delete an item. And then we can come back to the console and we can see ID equals undefined and category equals fun. So we're definitely missing our ID here. So the next step would be to just see, well, what is the value of rec.body? So let's go ahead and edit this log point. And let's just say that we could look at the entire rec.body, but instead, let's just look at the rec object. So we'll go ahead and press enter here. And then let's go ahead and try to delete a task and come back. And you can see that here's the rec object actually in our debug console. So let's go ahead and expand that. And here's the whole rec object. Let's go up and find the body. And you can see that the body is empty. Okay, so the ID parameter is not on the body. Well, where else might the ID parameter be? Well, it might be in the params object. And sure enough, there it is right there. So another way to do this would be to add a watch. So let's come back and go to our debugger and let's add a watch here and let's just look at the rec object. And then we're going to have to drop a breakpoint here in order to use the watch. And then we'll go ahead and refresh our application and try again. Okay, and now we can look at the value of rec inside of the watch. And if we go down to params, we will see there is our ID. And if you didn't know this, you can copy values directly from the watch here. And then if we pull open our debug panel, our debug console down here at the bottom, let's go ahead and we can set this ID equal to this new value here. Whoops, and it already comes with the quotes. We don't need those. So let's just add this. And now we're just going to actually test if we add the ID, does the delete actually work? So let's go ahead and go back and make sure ID has a value now, and it does. Let's go ahead and continue on. And we'll go back to our app and refresh, and we only have one item, so it does work. So now we know what's going wrong with this application, and we know that we can come here and change this to params.id and then redeploy our application. Once we disconnect the debugger here, Visual Studio Code will tell us, do you want to disable debug mode on the application because it can slow it down, and we'll just say disable. The application will be restarted and the debugger disconnected. So that's how you can debug your apps in production if your hosting provider supports it, like Azure App Service. It's important to note that you shouldn't debug in production if you know that you're going to disrupt the user experience, and you definitely shouldn't do it if you can get the same information from the logs or by replicating this scenario locally. Hey, if you like this video and subscribe for more tips and tricks on development, VS Code, and all things programming. Happy coding!